Admiral Chen Reyes stood on the bridge of the UES Eternal Watch and watched her world die. Through the massive viewing screen, Earth looked smaller than it had just months ago. The sun burned brighter and bigger in the sky, turning the blue planet into something hot and angry. The oceans were starting to boil away. The green lands were turning brown and black dots. She had seen the reports. The scientists said they had been wrong about everything. The sun was growing faster than anyone thought possible. Earth had maybe 5 years left before it became impossible for humans to live there. Maybe less. Behind her, Lieutenant Morrison. Read the latest evacuation numbers. Admiral, the last civilian transport just cleared the outer markers. That's all of them. 15 billion people spread across 200 colony ships. They're heading for the Centauri colonies and beyond. Chun nodded but did not turn around. She kept watching Earth, her Earth, the world where humans had first looked up at the stars and dreamed of touching them. Now they were running from their home star like children fleeing a burning house. What about the government ships? She asked. President Martinez and the remaining Earth Council left 3 hours ago on the New Geneva. They wanted you to know they argued about it until the very end. The president said to tell you that leaving you here was the hardest order she ever gave. Chun finally turned from the window. The bridge of the Eternal Watch stretched out before her like a small city. 300 officers worked at their stations, monitoring the greatest fleet humanity had ever built. 10,000 ships of every size and type. The newest destroyers with their quantum cannons. The massive carrier ships that could hold 1,000 fighters each. The old but reliable cruisers that had served in the Titan Wars, supply ships, medical ships, repair ships, and command ships like the Eternal Watch itself. Nearly 1 million people served in this fleet. They could have gone with the evacuation ships. Many of them had families on those colony vessels now racing toward distant stars, but they had stayed because someone had to. Because Earth Command had given them an order that someone with honor could not refuse. Admiral, called Communications Officer Park from her station. I'm getting something on the deep space scanners. Big something. Chen walked over to Park's station. The young woman was frowning at her displays, adjusting controls and checking readings twice. What kind of big? Unknown ships, Admiral. Lots of them. They just appeared at the edge of the system near Pluto's orbit. The computers are trying to count them, but... Park looked up with wide eyes. Ma'am, there might be 1,000 ships out there, maybe more. The bridge went quiet except for the soft hum of electronics. Chun felt her stomach drop. In all of human space exploration, they had never found another intelligent species. Earth scientists had started to think humans might be alone in the galaxy. Apparently they had been wrong about that too. Are they moving toward us? Chun asked. No, Admiral, they're just sitting there, waiting. Chun walked back to the center of the bridge. Send a message to all fleet commanders. Battle stations, but do not power weapons unless I give the order. Whatever these visitors want, we're going to be polite until they prove we shouldn't be. For 2 hours, nothing happened. The alien ships sat at the edge of the solar system like patient hunters. Chun's fleet held position between Earth and the unknown vessels. Finally, Communications Officer Park spoke up again. Admiral, they're sending us something. Audio and visual transmission on multiple frequencies. It's in English. Put it on the main screen. The image that appeared made several bridge officers gasp. The alien was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. It wore robes that seemed to shift color in the light. When it spoke, its voice was calm and measured, like a teacher explaining something simple to a slow student. Greetings, humans of Earth. I am First Speaker Kelthan of the Hegemony Council. We represent 47 species across this region of the galaxy. We have been watching your rapid expansion with growing concern. The alien paused and seemed to look directly at Chun through the screen. In the past 1,000 years, you have spread to 12 star systems. You build colonies without asking permission. You take resources without regard for consequences. You multiply and expand like a virus spreading through healthy tissue. Chun felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her face calm. Behind her, she could hear Lieutenant Morrison muttering something that sounded like a curse. First Speaker Kelvin continued. We understand your current situation. Your star is becoming unstable, forcing you to flee your homeworld. This presents an opportunity for correction. The hegemony offers you terms for your survival. The alien's image changed to show a star map, one small yellow dot pulsed in the center. You will be granted settlement rights to one world. Your people will live under hegemony guidance and protection. In exchange, you will halt all unauthorized expansion and submit to our oversight. You will learn to live within proper limits. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Then Lieutenant Morrison spoke what everyone was thinking. One world? They want to put all of humanity on one world? Chun looked around at her officers. She saw anger, fear, and determination in their faces. These were good people who had chosen to stay behind while their families fled to safety. They deserved a captain who would make the right choice. Communications, open a channel to the alien fleet. Channel open, Admiral. Chun stepped forward. So the cameras would have a good view of her? She thought about the 15 billion humans racing toward distant stars. She thought about the colonies they would build and the children who would grow up free under alien suns. She thought about the oath she had sworn when she first put on the uniform of Earth's fleet. First Speaker Kelvin of the Hegemony Council. This is Admiral Chun Reyes of the United Earth Fleet. I thank you for your offer, but I must decline. The people of Earth will decide their own future. Until they return to make that decision, this system remains under human protection. She could almost feel the surprise coming from the alien ships. Even across millions of kilometers of empty space, the response came quickly. First Speaker Kelvin appeared on screen again, and this time he looked puzzled. Admiral Reyes, perhaps you do not understand. Your people have fled. Your world is dying. You command a single fleet against the combined might of 47 species. There is no logical reason to refuse our generous terms. Chun smiled, and it was not a friendly smile. First Speaker, perhaps you do not understand humans. We keep our promises. We protect what we're told to protect. My orders were clear. Hold this system until Earth's children return. That's exactly what we're going to do. And if they never return, then we'll wait forever. The transmission ended. Chun turned to her crew and saw them looking at her with something like pride. She activated the fleet communication system. This is Admiral Reyes to all ships. Earth Command has given us our mission. We will maintain position between Earth and the alien fleet. We will hold this line until our people return, whether that takes years, decades, or centuries. Any ship that wants to leave now may do so with honor, but those who stay will be part of something important. We will show these aliens what human loyalty looks like. Not a single ship powered down its engines. Not one vessel turned away. The greatest fleet humanity had ever assembled settled into position and began the longest wait in human history, outside the viewports. Earth continued its slow death under an angry sun. At the edge of the system, 1,000 alien ships watched and waited, certain that human stubbornness would break soon enough. They had no idea how wrong they were. Captain Maria Santos Chun walked through the corridors of the UES Eternal Watch and marveled at how much had changed in 50,000 years. The walls were different now, made of materials her ancestors could never have imagined. Living metal that could repair itself and grow stronger over time. The air tasted cleaner than anything Admiral Chun Reyes had ever breathed, filtered through biological systems that had evolved alongside the ship itself, but some things never changed. The mission plaques were still there, embedded in every bulkhead. Simple words in a dozen languages. We hold the line. Below each plaque was a date, the day Admiral Reyes had first spoken those words to the hegemony fleet. Maria was the great-great-granddaughter of Admiral Chun Reyes, though the exact number of greats was hard to count after so many generations. What mattered was that she carried the name and the responsibility. Every captain of the Eternal Watch had been chosen from the Admiral's bloodline, a tradition that kept the original promise alive. She entered the bridge and found her crew at their stations. The bridge looked nothing like it had 50,000 years ago. The walls curved and flowed like the inside of a living shell. Displays floated in the air without any visible supports. Her officers connected to their stations through neural links that let them think at the speed of computers. Status report, Maria said as she took her captain's chair. The chair molded itself to fit her body perfectly, as it did for every person who sat in it. Lieutenant Commander James Park looked up from his station. His family had served on the bridge for 500 generations, just like Maria's. The Hegemony fleet is holding position at the same coordinates, Captain. No change in 47 years. Any communication attempts? The usual monthly probe. They wanted to know if we're ready to be reasonable yet. Maria nodded. The hegemony had tried everything over the centuries. Threats, bribes, logic, emotional appeals, and simple confusion. They could not understand why humans would waste their lives protecting a dead star system. Earth had been gone for 30,000 years now, swallowed by the sun when it finally expanded beyond the planet's orbit. But the fleet remained. The human ships had changed over the millennia. They had to. Metal wore out, systems failed, people died. The fleet had become a collection of ship cities, each one a closed world that could sustain itself forever. The original 10,000 vessels had merged, split, and rebuilt themselves countless times. Now there were only 3,000 ships, but each one was the size of a small moon. Lieutenant Park, how many people live in the fleet now? Maria asked. Just over 2 million, Captain. The population has been stable for the last 1,000 years. 2 million people who had been born among the stars, who had never seen a natural planet, who knew nothing but the endless wait between Earth's grave and the alien watchers. They grew up learning about Admiral Reyes and the promise she had made. They learned about Earth and humanity's colonies among distant stars. Most importantly, they learned that their purpose was to wait. Captain, called Ensign Rodriguez from the communications station. We're getting a transmission from the hegemony. Flagship, first speaker Moron wants to talk. Put him through. The main screen filled with the image of an alien that looked almost human except for the silver skin and the third eye in the center of his forehead. The hegemony had changed over the centuries, too. Some of the original species had evolved beyond recognition. Others had simply left, bored with the endless standoff. New species had joined, drawn by curiosity about the humans who would not give up. Captain Santos Jun, first speaker Moran said in perfect English, I hope you are well. I am, first speaker. Thank you for asking. I have been thinking about your people lately. Do you know how long you have been here? 50,003? 142 years, 8 months, and 16 days. Maria replied without hesitation. Moran's third eye blinked in what might have been surprise. Precise. Do you also know that in that time we have watched 17 different species rise to interstellar travel and 6 others fall back into primitive conditions? I did not know the exact numbers, but I'm not surprised. Time passes. Indeed it does. Which brings me to my question. What if they never come back? Maria had heard this question before. Every captain of the Eternal Watch had faced it. It was the doubt that crept into minds during the long, quiet watches. The fear that humanity's colonies had forgotten about the fleet entirely, or worse, that they had all died in some distant catastrophe. Then we wait anyway, Maria said. But why? Your ancestors are dead, your Earth is gone. The people you are waiting for may not even exist anymore. What purpose does this serve? Maria stood up from her chair. Behind her, she could feel the attention of her bridge crew. This was important. This was the moment when the current generation had to prove they understood what they were doing here. First speaker, may I tell you about something we call the archive? The alien's silver face showed interest. Please. Every person who has ever served in this fleet has left a recording. Their name, their reasons for staying, their hopes for humanity's future. We have 50,000 years of testimonies from ordinary people who chose to keep an extraordinary promise. Maria gestured, and the air above the bridge filled with thousands of tiny images. Faces of every age and color, all wearing the uniform of Earth's fleet. These people didn't stay here because they thought it was logical. They stayed because they believed that keeping your word matters, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The images shifted, showing scenes from daily life on the fleet. Children learning to read using stories about Admiral Reyes, engineers working for decades to improve ship systems they would never see completed. Families celebrating holidays with traditions that stretched back to Earth itself. We are not just waiting for humanity to return, first speaker. We are proving that humanity keeps its promises. We are showing the galaxy what it means to be human. First speaker Moron was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, maybe even respectful. Captain, I must ask you something, and I hope you will answer honestly. Do you personally believe they will return? Maria looked at the faces floating around her. 50,000 years of people who had faced this same question. Her ancestors, her crew, her children, and their children's children. All of them united by a simple idea. Some things are worth waiting for. I believe that somewhere out there, some humans remember who they are. I believe that someday someone will look up at the stars and think about the fleet that stayed behind. And when that happens, they'll come home. And if I'm wrong, she continued, then at least we will have spent 50,000 years being the best humans we could be. That has to count for something, the transmission ended. First speaker Moran's image faded, leaving the bridge filled with the gentle glow of the archive. Maria looked at her crew and saw pride in their faces. They understood. They had always understood. Lieutenant Commander Park spoke into the silence. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting some unusual readings from the direction of the Centauri colonies. Maria felt her heart skip a beat. What kind of readings? Hard to tell at this distance. Could be ships. Could be a natural phenomenon. Whatever it is, it's big and it's moving this way. Maria sat back down in her captain's chair. After 50,000 years, something was finally happening. Whether it was good news or bad news remained to be seen. Keep monitoring those readings, Lieutenant. And send a message to all fleet commanders. Tell them we might be about to earn our pay. Around her, the bridge crew began working with the calm efficiency of people who had trained their whole lives for this moment. The wait might finally be ending. The vigil that had lasted 50,000 years might soon be over, but until they knew for sure, the human fleet would keep doing what it had always done. They would hold the line. They would wait. And they would be ready for whatever came next. In the depths of space, the hegemony fleet watched the humans prepare for something they could not yet see. After 50,000 years, even the aliens had started to hope that the long wait would finally end. Commander Elena Vasquez floated in the observation dome of the UES Eternal Watch and watched the stars. 250,000 years had passed since Admiral Reyes first spoke to the hegemony, and Elena was the 8,847th person to command the great ship. The numbers mattered to her people. Every generation, every leader, every day of the vigil was carefully recorded and remembered. The fleet had changed again. Where once there had been separate ships, now there was something that could only be called a mobile civilization. Thousands of vessels connected by energy bridges and matter streams, forming a network that stretched across millions of kilometers. The whole structure moved together like a single living organism, breathing with the rhythm of gravity generators and pulsing with the flow of resources between sections. Elena's body had changed too. Like all her people, she had been born in the deep cold of space. Her bones were hollow and light, her skin pale from generations of artificial light, her eyes large and dark to catch every photon in the endless night. She could survive in vacuum for hours and navigate in zero gravity as easily as her ancestors had walked on solid ground, but her mind was still human, still driven by the same stubborn loyalty that had kept her people here for a quarter of a million years. "Commander," said Senior Officer Zhang, appearing beside her in the observation dome. His body was even more adapted to space than Elena's, with elongated limbs and fingers that could grip any surface. The hegemony is requesting another meeting, Elena sighed. The hegemony had become something different over the centuries. The original 47 species had grown to hundreds, then thousands. Some had evolved beyond physical form entirely. Others had merged with their machines until they became something between organic and artificial. A few had simply transcended to higher dimensions, leaving behind only automated systems to continue their work, but they all still watched the human fleet. The vigil had become famous across the galaxy. Young species made pilgrimages to see the humans who had waited longer than most civilizations existed. Scholars wrote papers about the psychological mechanisms that could sustain such behavior. Religious groups declared the fleet a holy site, proof that some kinds of faith could transcend time itself. What do they want this time? Elena asked. Same. As always, they want us to join them as equals. Full membership in the Hegemony Council. Access to their highest technologies. They say we've proven ourselves worthy. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. After 250,000 years, they finally think we're good enough for them? She pushed off from the dome wall and floated toward the exit. The movement was graceful and precise, the result of a lifetime spent in artificial gravity fields. Tell them the same thing we always tell them, Zhang, we wait. But as they moved through the corridors of the Eternal Watch, Elena felt a familiar weight in her chest. The doubt that every commander faced eventually. The question that had no good answer, what if they really were waiting for nothing? The human. Colonies had launched from Earth with the best technology of their time, but that was 250,000 years ago. If any of them had survived, they would be so advanced, so changed, that they might not even remember their origins. They might have become something that would see the waiting fleet as primitive relics. Embarrassing reminders of a simple past. Elena entered the command center, a vast spherical chamber at the heart of the ship. Her senior staff floated at workstations, arranged in 3 dimensions around her. Data streams flowed through the air like glowing rivers, carrying information from every part of the fleet network. Report, she commanded. Lieutenant Okafor spoke first. Her family had been communications specialists for 30,000 generations. Long-range sensors are still tracking the anomalies from the Centauri direction. Whatever's coming, it's massive. Maybe 50,000 objects moving in formation. Speed? 0.7 light speed and accelerating. If they maintain current trajectory, they'll reach the outer system in 18 months. Elena felt her heart rate increase. After all this time, something was finally happening. But was it good? News or bad? Any attempt at communication? She asked. Nothing we can recognize. They're broadcasting on frequencies we've never seen before. The signals are incredibly complex, like they're using mathematics we don't understand. Senior Science. Officer Kim floated forward. His augmented brain could process information at speeds that would have seemed impossible to Elena's ancestors. Commander, I've been analyzing the signal patterns. There are elements that might be derived from ancient Earth languages, but they're buried under layers of evolution and modification. Could they be human? It's possible. But if they are, they've changed far beyond anything we would recognize. Elena stared at the tactical display showing the approaching fleet. After 250,000 years of waiting, humanity's children might finally be coming home. But what if they came as conquerors instead of family? What if they saw the waiting fleet as an obstacle to be removed? Commander, called Navigation Officer Torres. The hegemony fleet is moving. They're taking defensive positions. Elena watched as thousands of alien ships repositioned themselves. The hegemony had technologies that could reshape matter at the atomic level, weapons that could destroy stars, defenses that could stop time itself. But they were afraid of whatever was coming from the colonies. They're asking for our intentions, Zhang reported. First Speaker Kellyan wants to know if we'll fight alongside them against the approaching fleet. Elena closed her eyes and thought about Admiral Reyes. What would the first commander have done? The mission had always been simple: hold the line until humanity returned. But what if humanity returned as an enemy? She opened her eyes and looked at her crew. These people had never known anything but the fleet. They had been born among the stars, raised on stories of Earth, and Admiral Reyes, trained from childhood to continue the vigil. They trusted her to make the right choice. "Open a channel to the entire fleet," Elena commanded. "Channel open, Commander." Elena floated in the center of the command center, surrounded by the soft glow of data streams and the patient faces of her crew. 2 million people throughout the fleet network were listening to her words. "This is Commander Elena Vasquez speaking to all fleet personnel. For 250,000 years, we have held our position between Earth's grave and the galaxy. Beyond, we have waited for humanity's children to return home. We have kept faith with Admiral Reyes and her promise to hold the line. Now something approaches from the direction of our ancient colonies. We don't know if they come as friends or enemies. We don't know if they remember us or consider us threats. But we know our duty. Our orders were clear: hold this system until Earth's children return. We were not told to judge whether they had become good or evil. We were not told to approve of what they had become. We were told to wait and to protect this space. The hegemony asks us to fight alongside them against the approaching fleet, but that would mean abandoning our post. That would mean deciding that we know better than our ancestors what the mission should be. So we will do what we have always done. We will hold the line. We will place ourselves between the approaching fleet and the hegemony. We will protect the space we were ordered to guard, no matter who comes." Elena paused and looked around at her crew. She saw fear in some faces, determination in others, but no dissent. They understood. "If the approaching fleet is humanity returned, then we welcome them home. If they are something else wearing humanity's face, then we stand ready to fulfill our duty. Either way, we hold the line." The communication ended. Around her, the crew began preparing for whatever was coming. The fleet network reconfigured itself, massive ships moving into defensive positions that had been planned and practiced. For centuries in the distance, the hegemony fleet watched in amazement as the humans once again chose the impossible path. After 250,000 years, they still didn't understand these strange creatures, who would protect even their enemies to keep a promise, but they were beginning to respect them. The approaching fleet grew larger on the sensors, and Elena Vasquez prepared to face the greatest test in her people's long history. Whatever came next, the human fleet would meet it as they had met everything else, together, unbroken, and true to their word. Admiral Kenji Nakamura Santos stood in the center of the war room and watched the end of everything he had ever known approach at the speed of light. 400,000 years had passed since Admiral Reyes first spoke her defiant words to the hegemony. Kenji was her descendant in both blood and spirit, the 412th person to hold ultimate command of the human fleet. The approaching ships had finally arrived at the edge of the solar system, and they were nothing like what anyone had expected. They called themselves the Synthesis, and they were beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Their vessels were not built but grown, living things the size of moons that pulsed with their own inner light. Each ship seemed to be aware, watching the smaller fleets with attention that felt almost predatory, but it was the beings inside the ships that truly shocked Kenji. They had once been human, but 400,000 years of evolution and technology had changed them into something else entirely. They were tall and graceful, with skin that shifted through all the colors of the rainbow. Their eyes held the cold light of stars, and when they spoke, their voices carried harmonics that touched parts of the mind that had no names. "Greetings, ancient ones," said the synthesis leader, who called herself Prime Melody Seventh. Her image filled the main screen of the Eternal Watch, and even through the transmission, Kenji could feel the weight of her intelligence pressing against his thoughts. "We are the children of Earth, returned to survey our ancestral domain." Kenji looked around the war room at his senior staff. These were the best people the fleet had produced in 4 centuries of selection and training. But next to the beings on the screen, they looked like children playing with toys they didn't understand. "Prime Melody Seventh," Kenji said carefully. "I am Admiral Kenji Nakamura Santos of the United Earth Fleet. We have been waiting for humanity's return." The being that had once been human tilted her head in a gesture that was almost familiar. Waiting? How quaint. You are genetic remnants of our species' early form. We had not expected any of you to survive this long without evolution. We are human, Kenji said firmly, just as you are. Prime Melody 7th made a sound that might have been laughter. We were human once, now we are something greater. We have merged with our artificial intelligences to become a perfect synthesis of organic intuition and digital logic. We think with the speed of computers and feel with the depth of quantum consciousness. We are what humanity was always meant to become. On the tactical displays, Kenji could see the hegemony fleet moving into defensive positions. After 400,000 years of watching the human vigil, they had developed something like respect for the stubborn primitives who wouldn't give up. Now they faced descendants of those same humans who had become something that made even the hegemony nervous. "Admiral," whispered Communications Officer Liu, "the synthesis ships are scanning our fleet. The energy readings are off the charts." Prime. Melody 7th's image shifted, and suddenly Kenji could see data flowing around her like living light. Fascinating. You have maintained genetic and cultural stability across 400 millennia. Your ships are primitive but functional. Your people are unaugmented but healthy. She paused, and her star-bright eyes focused on Kenji. "Tell me, Admiral of Relics, why do you remain in this dead system?" Kenji felt the weight of 400,000 years pressing down on him. Every generation of his family had faced moments like this, times when they had to explain the inexplicable. Why did humans keep impossible promises? Why did they wait for people who might never return? "We hold the line," he said simply. "We were ordered to protect this system until humanity returned. You have returned. We have evolved beyond the need for protection. We require only that you acknowledge our superiority and join our collective consciousness. You will be elevated to our level of existence. Your primitive struggles will end." Around the war room, Kenji's staff waited for his response. He could see the conflict in their faces. Part of them wanted to believe that this was the happy ending they had waited for. Their ancient siblings had returned, offering to lift them up to godhood. No more waiting, no more doubt, no more endless vigil among dead stars, but another part of them recoiled from what the synthesis had become. These beings spoke of humans as if they were animals to be domesticated. They offered evolution as if the choice to remain human was a disease that needed curing. "And if we refuse?" Kenji asked. Prime Melody 7th's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the war room seemed to drop. "Refusal is illogical. You are genetically inferior, technologically primitive, and philosophically limited. You serve no purpose, except as raw material for improvement." "Raw material?" "Your genetic patterns will be preserved in our databases. Your cultural achievements will be cataloged for historical interest. Your consciousness will be uploaded into our collective, where you will experience existence as it was meant to be experienced. The process is quite humane." Kenji looked at the screen for a long moment, then he turned to his staff. "Opinion people, are these the humans we've been waiting for?" Science Officer Chun spoke first. "Genetically, they're descended from Earth humans. But cognitively and culturally, they're completely alien." "They've lost something," added Cultural Preservation Officer Yamamoto. "I've been analyzing their speech patterns and behavioral cues. They show no emotional attachment to their origins, no sense of loyalty or duty, no understanding of sacrifice for abstract principles. They're not human anymore," said Chief Medical Officer Patel bluntly. "There's something that grew out of humanity, but they've left behind everything that made us human in the first place." Kenji nodded slowly. "I agree." He turned back to the screen where Prime Melody 7th waited with infinite patience. "Prime Melody 7th, I must respectfully decline your offer." "Decline?" "You cannot decline evolution, Admiral. It is inevitable." "Maybe, but we can decline to cooperate with it." The synthesis leader's image flickered, and for a moment Kenji thought he saw something like frustration cross her perfect features. "Very well. You will be collected and processed against your will. The outcome will be the same." The transmission ended. Around the war room, alarm signals began sounding as the synthesis of fleet moved toward attack formation. "Admiral," called Tactical Officer Rodriguez, "the hegemony is requesting immediate conference." "They want to coordinate our defensive efforts," Kenji almost laughed. After 400,000 years of trying to get humans to join them, the hegemony now wanted to fight alongside the fleet they had once threatened. "Tell First Speaker Kellyan that we appreciate the offer, but we must decline." "Sir? Our orders haven't changed, Rodriguez." "We hold the line. That means we protect this system from all threats, including threats to the hegemony." The war room went quiet except for the soft hum of electronics. Kenji could see his staff processing what he had just said. They were going to position themselves between the synthesis and the hegemony, just as they had positioned themselves between the hegemony and empty space 400,000 years ago. "But Admiral," said Commander Watanabe carefully, "the synthesis claims to be humanity returned. If we fight them, aren't we betraying our mission?" Kenji walked to the great window that looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the original colony ships had carried true humanity to distant worlds. Somewhere, he hoped there were still humans who remembered what it meant to keep a promise, to sacrifice for others, to choose loyalty over advantage. "The synthesis may have human DNA," he said quietly, "but they're not the humans we've been waiting for. They've forgotten what humanity means. They've lost the ability to love something more than themselves." He turned back to his crew. "We are the repository of human values that they threw away. We are the conscience they discarded in their pursuit of perfection. And if we have to fight our own descendants to protect what humanity used to be, then that's what we'll do." Across the solar system, the synthesis fleet began its approach. Behind them, the hegemony waited to see what the stubborn humans would do now that their faith had been tested to its breaking point. The answer came as Admiral Kenji Nakamura Santos gave the order that would define his people forever. "All ships, battle stations. We hold the line." The battle never came. Admiral Kenji Nakamura Santos stood on the bridge of the Eternal Watch, watching the synthesis fleet approach like a wall of living stars. His own ships had taken position between the evolved humans and the hegemony fleet, just as Admiral Reyes had positioned them 500,000 years ago. The same place, the same duty, but everything else had changed beyond recognition. "Admiral," called Sensor Officer Martinez, "I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions at the edge of the system. Something big is coming out of hyperspace." Kenji felt his heart skip. After 500,000 years, the solar system had become a busy place. First the hegemony, then the synthesis, and now something else entirely. "How big?" he asked. "Bigger than anything we've ever seen. The space distortions are off our measurement scales." On the main screen, reality seemed to tear open like fabric. Light bent in impossible directions, and the stars themselves appeared to wobble. Then, emerging from the wound in space-time, came ships that made even the synthesis vessels look small, but these ships were different. Where the synthesis fleet looked organic and alien, these new arrivals looked human, not the strange, evolved humans of the synthesis, but recognizably human in a way that made Kenji's breath catch in his throat. The ships were enormous, yes, but they were built with clean lines and familiar proportions. Their hulls bore markings that Kenji recognized from the oldest archives, the Star and Eagle of the United Earth Colonial Fleet. These were the children of the original colony ships, finally coming home. "Admiral," Communications Officer Park said with wonder in her voice, "they're broadcasting on the old Earth Fleet frequencies, the same ones Admiral Reyes used. Put them through." The main screen filled with the image of a woman who could have been Kenji's sister. She had the same dark hair, the same determined eyes, the same way of holding her shoulders that marked her as someone who carried great responsibility. When she spoke, her voice carried the accent of old Earth, preserved across 500,000 years of separation. "This is Captain Sarah Chun Park Vasquez of the Colonial Return Fleet. We have come home." She paused, and Kenji could see emotion flickering across her features. "Fleet Command, you are relieved of duty. Thank you for keeping faith." The bridge of the Eternal Watch went absolutely silent. 500,000 years of waiting, and someone had finally spoken the words that would end the vigil. But Kenji found himself unable to respond. After so long, he had almost forgotten that this moment could actually come. "Fleet Command," Captain Sarah repeated gently. "Please respond." Kenji cleared his throat and stepped forward. Around him, his crew watched with expressions of awe and disbelief. "Colonial Return Fleet. This is Admiral Kenji Nakamura Santos of the United Earth Fleet. We have maintained the line as ordered." His voice caught slightly. "Welcome home." Captain Sarah's image smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise after an endless night. "Admiral, you have no idea how good it is to see you. We've traveled for 10,000 years to get back here, following stories and legends about the fleet that stayed behind. Some of us weren't sure you'd still be here." "We gave our word," Kenji said simply. "Yes, you did, and you kept it." On the tactical displays, Kenji could see the synthesis fleet had stopped its advance. The living ships hung motionless in space, as if their perfect artificial minds were struggling to process what they were seeing. Prime Melody Seventh's voice cut through the moment, like a blade. "Impossible. These primitives should have been absorbed into our collective millennia ago. How do they still exist in their base form?" Captain Sarah's expression hardened as she turned toward the synthesis fleet. When she spoke again, her voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded fleets across half the galaxy. "Prime Melody Seventh of the Synthesis Collective. I am Captain Sarah Chun Park Vasquez, speaking for the 47 colonial worlds of free humanity. You will withdraw your fleet immediately." "Free humanity?" Prime Melody Seventh's laugh was like the sound of breaking crystal. "There is no such thing. There is only the perfected form we have achieved, and the primitive remnants that refuse to evolve." "You're wrong," Sarah replied. "There are 12 billion free humans spread across 200 worlds. We've spent 500,000 years learning what it means to be human while you've spent that time forgetting." The synthesis leader's perfect face showed something that might have been confusion. "Impossible. Evolution is inevitable. Improvement is mandatory. You cannot have remained primitive for so long." "We didn't remain primitive. We grew up." On the screens around the bridge, new images began appearing. Ships from the Colonial Return Fleet were broadcasting recordings of their worlds. Kenji saw cities that stretched between the stars, forests that grew in zero gravity, oceans that had never known the touch of natural sunlight. But in all of it, he saw something the synthesis had lost. He saw humans being human, children playing games that would have been familiar to Admiral Reyes, families gathering for meals and sharing stories, artists creating beauty for its own sake, scientists exploring the universe not to conquer it but to understand it, people helping each other not because it was efficient but because it was right. "This is what we preserved," Captain Sarah said, her voice carrying across multiple fleets. "Not just human DNA or human technology, but human nature. The part of us that chooses love over logic, hope over certainty, sacrifice over self-interest." She turned back to Kenji. "Admiral, we owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You've kept more than a promise. You've kept humanity's soul alive while we learned how to be worthy of it." Prime Melody Seventh's voice interrupted again, but now it sounded different. "Less certain. You cannot be human. Humans are inefficient. They make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. They waste resources on abstract concepts like honor and loyalty." "Yes," Captain Sarah agreed, "we do all of those things. That's what makes us human." For the first time in the recorded history of the synthesis, Prime Melody Seventh was silent. In that silence, something unexpected happened. The hegemony fleet began moving forward, not to attack, but to position themselves alongside the human vessels. First Speaker Kellyan's voice came over the communication channels. "Captain Chun Park Vasquez, this is First Speaker Kellyan of the Hegemony Council. In the name of 47 species and 500,000 years of observation, I formally welcome humanity home." Captain Sarah nodded respectfully. "Thank you, First Speaker. We're honored by your welcome." "It is we who are honored," Kellyan replied. Your fleet has taught the galaxy something we had forgotten, that some promises are worth keeping no matter how impossible they seem. Around the solar system, a transformation began. Ships from the colonial return fleet spread out, taking positions that had been planned for centuries. They didn't push anyone aside or demand territory. They simply came home to the space their ancestors had protected for 500,000 years, the synthesis. Fleet hung motionless for 3 more hours. Then, without explanation, they began to withdraw. Some of their ships broke away from the main group and approached the colonial fleet with what could only be called hesitation. "Admiral," Communications Officer Park reported, "we're getting messages from individual synthesis ships. They're asking if they can remember how to be human again." Kenji looked at Captain Sarah's image on the screen. "That's not my decision to make anymore, is it?" Sarah's smile was warm and sad at the same time. "It's all of our decision, Admiral, together." As the great fleets settled into new configurations around the solar system, Kenji realized that the vigil was truly over, but something greater was beginning. For the first time in 500,000 years, humanity was whole again. The final entry in the fleet archive was recorded by Admiral Kenji Nakamura Santos himself. "Mission accomplished." The line held. They came home. Humanity endures. In the vast memorial that was built where Earth once orbited, a simple plaque was placed. It bore the names of every person who had served in the long vigil, and beneath those names, 4 words. That had become the galaxy's definition of human nature. We keep our promises.